Welcome to Every Musical Ever. This podcast contains strong language and it's not suitable for children.
Welcome to Every Musical Ever. It's Grease Week. This Friday I'll be talking to Randall Kleiser, the director of the movie. My guest today to talk all things Grease is Christie Whelan Browne.
It's time to chat, just you and me. How many musicals can there be? I hope that there's infinity. Kettle on and pour the tea. Every musical ever. It's a show that is so clever. It's a very fine endeavor. Every musical ever. Every musical ever.
Hello. Welcome to Every Musical Ever. I'm your host, Richard Carroll. Thanks for joining us for another week. Grease is the word this week. I just want to say thank you to all of you who got in touch about our Hamilton episodes last week. There was a lot of you. I'm still getting them in. I'm not going to continue the controversy about the gasp at the end or anything else, but I really appreciate you all continuing to correspond about it. This week we are turning our attention to Grease. It's another biggie. Christie Whelan Browne joins me to talk all things Grease. Christie is one of my oldest friends in Australia, I guess. I think you can probably hear that in the conversation. I realised that I swore more in this episode than I usually do. Apologies for that. I think it's just the way that Christie and I normally talk to each other. But she has a long history with the show, both as a fan and as a performer. As I said in my intro, on Friday I will be interviewing Randall Kleiser, the director of the movie Grease. He spoke to me via Zoom from LA, so don't miss that. That's in our Grease Encore episode that will be out this Friday. If you're not already subscribed, make sure you hit subscribe. That way that episode will arrive in your feed as soon as it's released. Thank you to those of you who are joining up to the Patreon. We're getting more and more every week, which I really appreciate. There's various perks to being on the Patreon. You get episodes early, you get extra content, you get video episodes. You can watch every episode on video on the Patreon, and you also get exclusive episodes. So there's an exclusive episode on the Patreon right now with myself and Tom Sherrar talking about Australian musicals. And I've just recorded another one with Elise McCann just for the Patreon, which will be going up in a couple of weeks. That one is talking about all three musical versions of A Star Is Born. The Judy Garland, the Barbra Streisand, and of course the Lady Gaga. We talked about all three, compared and contrasted. I had a really good conversation with Elise about that. I found it really enlightening. That'll be on the Patreon in the next couple of weeks. And the Patreon fans get not just each week's episodes a day early, but they also get to choose some episodes that they get really early. So I did a poll this week on the Patreon asking people which episode they would like now. That's not going to be released for a few months. And they voted to get the Avenue Q episode with last week's guest, Josie Lane. She and I did another conversation on Avenue Q, which was awesome. So I'll be editing that and sharing that with the Patreon this week. It probably won't come out on the main podcast until 2021. So check out the Patreon. There's a link in the episode description. You can sign up for anywhere from $5 a month upwards for various levels of access. But most of that exclusive content you get whatever level you are. And it's a way to make the podcast sustainable. We pay all of the guests who come on here, and especially at the moment with the performing arts industry shut down, it's a really great way for me to be able to provide a little bit of income for people in the theatre industry. As always, you can get in touch with us on social media at Every Musical Pod on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Or you can email everymusicalpod@gmail.com with any correspondence. We love to hear from you. I always say we. Have you noticed that? I say we as if I've got an entire team of people working on this podcast with me. I love to hear from you. I just want to make one thing very clear before I start this main episode. Any references to the 70s and cocaine flying around on the set of the movie Grease, that's a joke. I just want you all to know I'm not making any libelous accusations. I'm sure they were all clean as a whistle, sharp as a thistle. And so I'm just putting that disclaimer out here, just in case that subject comes up in our conversation. Okay, let's get on to the main content. Here is myself and Christie Whelan Browne talking about Grease.
I used to watch that movie from when I was 2 years old, which I now know is completely inappropriate. But I used to watch it every single day until my cousin told me they left the videotape out in the rain because no one could take it anymore. And then it was the first musical I did at my high school. Did a musical every year. It was the first musical I did at high school. I played Marty. And then it was my first ever professional job in which I played Patty Simcox. And then it was the job that took me over to the UK. Yeah, then I ended up meeting ONJ later in life. You know, like I feel this deep connection to the musical Grease. That's why I'm so glad you chose me for this podcast.
So you played Patty Simcox in the Arena one, is that right?
Yeah.
And then in London?
Yeah.
So
both times understudying Sandy.
Oh, I was going to say you never played Sandy, but you understudied Sandy.
Yeah, so I never went on in Australia, but I always talk about how Natalie Bassingthwaite was playing Sandy here, and one night we were out at a nightclub and it was like 4 a.m. and she was up. Rogue Traders had just released Voodoo Child, and so she was up on this table like screaming the word Voodoo Child was playing in the club and everyone's around and jumping up and down, and I was looking at Nat thinking, she's going to blow a vocal cord any minute. It's 4 a.m.
She's going to blow those vocal cords. I'm ready.
And then I was like, shit, but I'm still here. I've got to go home, go to bed. I've got to get my 8 hours sleep. But of course she never went off. She had cords of steel.
Okay, let's rewind to childhood. Do you remember what it was that you loved so much about the movie?
I think it was the songs and the, colour and movement. Obviously now when I hear the stuff about, condoms and so much that just went way over my head.
Same.
But also just Sandy, I just loved her. I mean, she was Australian. Maybe there was that. She was the good little girl that was corrupted pretty much to fit in with the gang. But I can only assume that it was the songs because I just loved them so much. There's a photo of me at 2 years old in my mum's high heels, a pair of black tights and like a puffy parka, which was my version of a leather jacket in front of the screen. So I just wanted to be Sandy, I guess. Still do.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we can get into like the kind of issue, and I feel like it's every musical I talk about on this podcast, it's like we get into like, yeah, well, obviously it's like a terrible message for women. I was talking with Lucy Durack about Phantom of the Opera, and I was just like, yeah. And Beauty and the Beast the other day, a lot of sort of kidnapping women and making them fall in love with their captors. Yeah, and that's kind of one of the things that everyone always sort of acknowledges about Grease now is that it ends with Sandy essentially saying, I'm going to change to be like you, and then everything's great.
But also, I guess he changed to be like her. He came with the Letterman jacket first. I guess the fact that she had to be smoking was probably the worst part of the message. If you want to be cool, you have to start smoking.
That's the shorthand. Yeah, but that's the weird thing is that he basically has gone on his own journey and he's gone, you know what, I'm an idiot and, I actually love Sandy and that's all that matters. So it's like the movie can just end there, but they were like, oh no, let's just get Olivia to turn up with a ciggy. Tell me about it, stud.
Well, they'd already sewed her into that black outfit. They were like, we're not going to lose this. This is quality.
Fair, it's iconic.
It is. And I just was reading about how it was so tight on her. She didn't get to go to the toilet for the whole day.
Oh, God.
What?
Christie Whelan couldn't do that.
No, I've got to go, but you got to go.
So the original production in 1972, I think, of the musical was apparently much raunchier and much more kind of... Because, of course, it was only I think it was 1971. So it was only 12 years after when it's set, which is kind of weird to think now that the equivalent now would be if it was set in 2008 and we have this nostalgic musical about how different life was.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was really raunchy. It had lots of sort of swearing in, much more kind of explicit sexual stuff. And the impression I get is that it was sort of created as a parody of 1950s movies. So in the same way that something like Hairspray is set in the 50s but brings out much more of the sex and racism and all that kind of stuff. So Grease was a little bit imagine if it was one of those 50s teen musicals but with what teens were actually doing. And I think that was part of that ending was about a trope of those teen movies was that there'd be a bad boy and a good girl, and by the end of the movie he'd become a good guy with her, and they wanted to kind of subvert that and be no, what if she comes over to the bad side, which if you think about that is a little bit cooler, but yeah, that's how I'm trying to justify it for when I direct the show.
Yeah, it was a nod to that 50s period where the men wore grease in their hair and ate greasy hamburgers. So that was a quote that I read. That was really what it was all about. Saturday Night Fever was a similar storyline, wasn't it? Bad boy, good girl.
That's true. And it's pretty dark, Saturday Night Fever. Have you ever seen the movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like...
Yeah, very dark.
It doesn't really stand up in terms of gender politics either.
No. Then the funniest thing that I just read about the movie of Grease is that Henry Winkler was offered the role of Danny first.
Can you imagine?
But he turned it down because he didn't want to be typecast.
Well, fair enough. But, like, the weird thing about the Fonz is we kind of all think of the Fonz as, like, this cool character. But the whole point of him on Happy Days was supposed to be that he was, like, not cool. And he was, like, 40 and hanging out with these kids.
Exactly. He was so not cool.
People loved the Fonz. So, since you bring up the casting on the movie, so apparently, and I learned this from Wikipedia whilst researching for this podcast episode, John Travolta was, he was kind of on top of the world. He was in that sitcom Welcome Back, Kotter, and then he just made Saturday Night Fever. And so he was cast in this movie. And apparently he was quite instrumental in getting the director on board and also suggesting Olivia for this film, which I hadn't realised.
I know, and she was too nervous. I mean, I just read that the director made them all do a crow's feet test because they were all in their mid to late 20s, sorry. And he wanted to see that they could pass for teens, and they did a crow's feet test. I mean, that is a test I would not pass.
But I think it's one of those things, it's just proof that as long as you just cast them all way too old, we stop thinking about it. Like, if you had, like, a couple of kids there who genuinely look 16, it would be like, what the fuck is going on? But because they're all just, like, full adults who are about to draw their pension, we're just like, sure, let's go with it.
It's like me playing Tanya Degano last year.
Did you have to do a crow's feet test for STC?
Yeah, but I just glued my hair back under a wig and just really pulled a tight ponytail.
Yeah, you get away with it a bit more on stage. It's like, we just move Christie a little further upstage. Bring the lights down on her.
I remember one day in the text, I got a note from Simon Phillips to say, "You're doing too much shading on your face. It's making you look older." I was so offended.
Oh, God. But you're like, I'm not doing any shading, Simon.
I was like, this is exactly what Olivia Newton-John did when she played Sandy in Grease.
Oh, ONJ. Yeah, so she'd basically made no movies before. I think she'd had a couple of, like, small roles in little movies or something. But she was obviously like a country and western singer. And this kind of catapulted her into superstardom. You're an Olivia fan.
Huge Olivia fan. And I've read quite a bit about this, that it was at a dinner party that she was approached to do it. And she said, but I couldn't do an American accent, which is why Sandy Dombrowski became Sandy Olsen from Australia. And I just find that so hilarious that someone could be like, I couldn't possibly learn an accent for the role.
Yeah, and they were just like, it's fine, we'll just rewrite the whole thing. I mean, why not? Who cares?
Yeah, she came from down under for the school holidays and then she never went home.
Yeah. Tell us a bit more about how ONJ's featured in your career.
Well, I obviously just loved and worshipped her. And then after I did Grease in the UK, when I came back to Australia a couple of years later, I got the lead in Xanadu, the musical. And part of the big idea was that we were going to raise money for the Olivia Newton-John Cancer and Wellness Centre while putting on this show. So Olivia was really heavily involved, and the very first day that we met, I was getting ready for a photo shoot with her. I was in the toilet cubicle and she walked in and I was like, oh. And she was so lovely to me. And we had this photo where I am smiling way too hard. You know, when you're just beyond excited that, my eyes are not existing because they're smiling too hard. And then she came for the opening night of Xanadu, the musical, and we sang Xanadu together on stage. And
I remember.
I was also quite ill. I had a kidney infection, and her husband have this like Amazon like wellness, product. And they were like plowing me with all these products to get me healthy. And she sat holding my hands, giving me her energy. And she was very, very lovely to me. Sadly, as soon as we left the stage after singing Xanadu together, that musical went down the toilet quicker than any other show that the Docklands has ever seen. So it was a very short-lived high that I was on, but still I treasure that time and that photo where I'm smiling way too hard. I'll always have that.
Exactly, you'll always have it. I reckon you saboed it. You were like, I've got what I came here for. That's enough.
Exactly. Exactly. I don't want to spend the next 6 months on roller skates or break my neck.
But it's quite funny how she had a little bit of the trajectory that Sandy has in the movie, because after Grease, I don't know if it was straight after, but she did Xanadu and then the album with all like Let's Get Physical and all that stuff, like much sexier. She kind of went bad Sandy in real life as well.
Well, I read a quote where she said she was nervous to do bad Sandy. She was always the girl next door, and she felt quite out of her comfort zone. And I really understand, not that I'm in a girl next door thing, but recently I had to do a web series where I had to it was a sexual sort of scene, and I was so mortified because I've never had to do that before. But Olivia said that it was good for her and for Sandy, it was invigorating or something.
Yeah.
And I sort of feel the same, because if you're trying to be an actor, it's good to get out of that comfort zone.
Totally. So when this show was originally on in 1972, so it started off, I think, in Chicago, because it was very kind of Chicago specific, the original production, and then transferred to Broadway and became the longest running Broadway musical ever at that time. I never realized it was quite that huge on Broadway in its original run.
Wow.
And so obviously it ran for a long time on Broadway and touring, etc. And again, something I never realized, I think I did know that Jeff Conaway, who plays Kinnicky in the movie, he had played Danny in the stage show. But I never realized that bloody John Travolta was in the show of Grease. I think he played, like, what are the boys called? Potsy or something? Doody. Yeah, maybe Doody in the US tour. You know that?
Oh my God, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's so wild.
And did you know that Jeff, as Kinnicky, was also supposed to sing Grease Lightning in the movie, but that Travolta was like, no, I'll be taking that number?
Yes, thanks very much, Jeff. You're not needed on set today. Yeah. Obviously, they'd cut some of the songs, they added some new songs, but they essentially just moved all of the songs to being for Danny or Sandy. Obviously, Rizzo has a couple of numbers, and then there's the weird featured ones like Teen Angel and all that kind of thing. Because I think there were some other numbers that were moved and given to other principal characters. But, sucks to be Jeff Conaway.
I know, and apparently, this is pretty tragic, but in Grease Lightning, in filming that number, he slipped when they were doing something. He slipped on the car, hurt his back. And that's when he became addicted to painkillers, which ultimately led to his death.
Shit, that's horrible.
It was also said that on the set of Grease, he had a crush on Olivia Newton-John, and he felt really awkward around her, but then he ended up marrying her sister.
What?
Yeah.
I did not know that. Jeff Conaway married ONJ's sister? Wow. That's a great Grease fact.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yes, so Travolta had been in Grease in a different role. Jeff Conaway had been in Grease in a different role. The only person who's in the movie who had been in the Broadway show in the same role was Jamie Donnelly, who played Jan.
Oh.
And she was getting so old that her hair had begun to go grey, so she had to dye her hair back again so that she could still wear it. High school.
Wow. I mean, that Rizzo was 33. Stockard Channing was 33.
Yeah.
They were pretty much full-grown adults. When you look back at it now, it's very obvious.
Funny how I think that's affected how they cast it on stage as well. Just we just cast people in their 20s and maybe even 30s because that's just what we expect now.
Well, I was early 20s when I did both versions. I still passed the crow's feet test back then.
Yeah. Let's talk about Rizzo. Stockard Channing, iconic. Probably my favourite performance in the movie. And obviously she's, gone on to have, an incredible career on stage and, as a legitimate actress in movies and TV, etc. That's a great role, isn't it, Rizzo? Did you ever hanker after that one?
No. See, girls always fit into two categories. You were either a Sandy or a Rizzo. And I was never a Rizzo, never cool enough. And another fact I just read was that Jeff Conaway insisted that her hickeys be real, not by makeup. So he gave Stockard real hickeys. Hickey from Kinnicky.
That wouldn't fly now.
Card. No! That's just for the 1970s. Yeah, he just laid a couple on her before he married ONJ's sissy.
Wow. And just to sort of slightly fast forward some of the other versions as well, Rizzo's is a role that, has often been star cast. And they had Rosie O'Donnell in the Broadway version, which is kind of slightly mind-boggling casting. And then, so have you seen Grease Live, the TV live version they did in America? You have seen it? What do you think?
Who was that? Was it?
Vanessa Hudgens played Rizzo.
Yeah.
Erin Tveit was Danny, and Juliana, what's her name from Dancing with the Stars?
Huff.
Yes, she was Sandy.
Look, I'm in love with Erin Tveit.
Fair. Who
in
isn't?
every possible way. So I would watch him play any role. That's the thing about Grease. Even if it's bad, it's always good.
That's
Because the
true.
songs are always so good.
Because it's already like cheesy and kind of almost got a sing-along vibe. I'd never seen the Grease live. I'd never seen any of the live musicals, I don't think. But I've watched like clips of a few of them recently, preparing for podcasts to talk about the shows. And the Grease one looked by far the best. First of all, it was like slick and it kind of looked impressive and exciting. But they also it was directed by Tommy Kail, I think, director of Hamilton. And I thought they did a really
Never
good job
heard
of
of
like, firstly having the live audience, which gave it like a vibe, and also just like making it a bit more like really acknowledging that they're doing a live TV thing. So like traveling through the sound stages and going outside, and they had that really cool opening with Jessie J singing Grease the song and like walking through the dressing rooms and everything like that. And I just thought that was really cool, and it made it like seem like it was like a real event.
Yeah, and the buggies, they'd get in their buggies from one scene to another. It was. And like I said, there's that vibe, whether it's from people's childhoods or whatever it is, but I remember the night we opened the Grease the Arena Spectacular at Sydney Entertainment Centre, and that overture played of Grease is the Word. It was Chong Lim's band. It was like, electric guitars, and it was just like and 10,000 people in the Sydney Entertainment Centre screaming, and we were all piled under this big entrance, and we all marched out together, bum, 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 bum. Yeah, I remember I was crying. I had my hula hoop there ready to go out and do the ring number, and I just thought it was just the most exciting noise I'd ever heard, which was the crowd roar with that overture. And my dad actually flew to Adelaide. They'd flown to Sydney to see the show. They saw it in Melbourne, and he flew to Adelaide because he said he wanted to hear that sound again, that overture with the roar of the crowd. And it's just, that's the effect that music has on people. Maybe there's some iconic lines and whatever, but really I think it's all about the music.
Yeah, we come back to that so often on this podcast. There's no great musical without great songs. And you're right, it's a really exciting kind of... We'll talk about the songs in more detail in a second. I did notice on the Grease Live thing, when I was watching Grease Lightning, that they used like PG versions of a lot of the lyrics.
Yeah.
Because especially in Grease Lightning, there's some pretty like explicit lyrics, but they were like, I can say without a doubt, I'll be really making out in Grease Lightning.
Yeah, that's in the musical. That's what they do.
Oh, it is? It's like, we all know that's not the lyrics. We've seen the movie.
Be getting lots of tit.
See, I when I first watched Grease, and like obviously watched it over and over again, like as a kid, like we all do, but my version was taped from the TV. What about yours?
Yeah, same.
So what I didn't realize until they re-released it in, I think it must be 1997 or 8, like it was the 20th anniversary in the cinemas, and I went to see it in the cinemas with my friends. We were like, oh, Grease, this movie we know so well, and we were watching it, and I was like, oh, they've done like put in like deleted scenes. There's all these bits with like Rizzo and Kaneki having sex in the car, and she asked him if he's got a condom, and then everyone was like, no, that's always been in it. I was like, oh, it was cut out of the version that I watched on TV, which was probably on at like 2 p.m. So
your mum pressed pause on the tape on that scene.
This is really embarrassing, but when I was very young and first watching it, and Rizzo, and not Jan, who's the other girl? Marty, when Marty says to Rizzo, like, what's the matter? And she's like, I skipped a period. I thought that meant that she'd like skipped a period at school, like a lesson.
Me too.
It's like, why is she getting so worried about it?
And then she says, do you think you might be PG? PG. I'm like, what's PG? And when he said about the condom, it broke. I got it when I was in the 2nd grade. I was like, no, just no idea, and not even inquisitive about it. Just okay with whatever it was. It broke, and he's had it a long time.
Yeah, let's get on with it. Totally. It's amazing how we don't question those things.
Yeah. And even Vince Fontaine, that's another problematic scene, isn't it?
Yeah.
Vince Fontaine with Marty at the high school dance. Inappropriate.
Yes, it's really, maybe that's one of the reasons why they cast such older looking actors. Oh, it's bad.
They said on the Wikipedias that Marty had to be taken out of the dance scenes. Maybe that's why they put her with Vince Fontaine, because she couldn't dance at all. So,
oh, really?
Yeah.
I love that they just don't bother asking people these things. It's like, can you do an American accent? No. All right, we'll just make the character Australian. Can you dance?
Well, there's no one else, so you're it.
We've already made the costume. Sorry, you can't dance. We're now introducing a subplot where a middle-aged man tries to aggressively chat you up.
I know. And then apparently Elvis was supposed to play that role.
Oh, Vince Fontaine.
Yeah.
That would have been good casting.
Or maybe it was Teen Angel.
Oh, yeah. Well, that makes sense too. But I feel like they asked Elvis to be in every musical in the 70s. I know that Barbra Streisand wanted him to be in A Star Is Born. And there's another one as well. I can't remember what it was he was offered and didn't do. Yeah, you can see that.
Yeah, totally. But apparently, there's that line, Elvis, let me be, keep that pelvis far from me. And when they filmed that scene, he died that day that they filmed that scene.
As a direct result, he heard about it. He was on the tour.
He was like,
what the hell? Shooting his television. Sorry, Elvis.
Oh, Elvis.
R.I.P. So, let's talk about songs. I want to get deep into the songs. Straight off, do you have a favourite? Would you be like, if I had to pick one song, here it is.
Hopelessly Devoted.
Fair. It's a beautiful song.
Yeah, it's everything. When she put that paper in the blow-up pool in the movie and swirled it around, that was a strange direction, wasn't it?
The blow-up pool.
What do you take from that as a director? Let's hear your insight on that scene.
Yeah, so she has... Why does she have the picture? Is that explained, or she just happened to have a picture? I can't remember.
I think it's not a picture. It's paper that she was writing on, I think.
Oh, yes, of course. That's right. Yes,
and then his face just came up in the water.
That's right. Yes. Well, I guess it's just a really one way of showing us that she's like thinking about him and imagining him. Yeah, him appearing in the water is one thing. But then, putting the paper in and swirling it around. Because it's not her saying like, fuck this letter, I'm putting it in the water. It's just being like...
I'm burning it. Yeah.
I don't know.
She was just lovingly swirling it around. It's very questionable.
It is, but you know what? It bloody worked. It bloody worked for them, so good on them.
So there was always moments that I would fast forward. There were songs like, but I can't think of what was my fast forward moment. Maybe some of the dance.
Really? Blasphemy.
Maybe.
All right, I'm going to look at the song list, because obviously, as we've said, there's so many different versions, but I'm going to look at the song list from the movie. Okay, thoughts. Obviously, Grease. It's apparently just called Grease. Grease is the word, the theme tune, which was written for the movie, right?
Yeah. And, the cartoon that goes with that opening title.
Yeah.
They wanted to make the movie a cartoon.
What are you talking about?
Like, that was their idea, that they were going to make it an animated film. And then they decided no, so they just decided to do the opening credits as animation.
Wow, that's crazy.
I mean, I never skipped that intro. It was so good. Those animations for that time were so good.
It was really cool. And it's a great song. And that song's written by the Bee Gees. So again, obviously the songs for the musical, and then you have the new songs for the film, which were written by John Farrar. Then they were just like, like any theme tune. They're like, oh, get the Bee Gees to write a song to put over the opening credits.
And it couldn't have been a better song.
Couldn't be better. And that was in your version, yeah? It was in when you did it?
Yeah.
Obviously.
Of course, I demanded it.
Can you imagine... of course, you just said about the opening chords. But can you imagine if you went to see Grease and it just started with just some song from the original production that you don't recognise? Like, ripped off!
But I do love that they start... where they meet on the beach. Oh, Danny, is this the end?
Yeah.
No, it's only the beginning.
That's true. That's pre-credits, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think in the musical, when I saw it, the last production here in Australia, I think they start the show with Danny and Sandy on either side. He's singing, oh, Sandy, Sandy. And she joins in, someday when high school is done. And then that stops into Grease is the word. So I think that's like an ode to the movie where they first met on the beach. Just
to make it clear to us that they had some kind of relationship before the action of the
Just for those who have no idea what they're coming into.
Also, prior to that, in that production, if you remember, was it before the show or interval? I think it was before the show. Wasn't Bert Newton as Vince Fontaine out on stage pretending to DJ and talking to people in the audience?
Yes!
And like saying happy birthday to people?
Yeah, I remember the night I was there, he was like, and hello, Whelan Browne.
Hello, Whelan
I was just shrinking in my seat.
Yeah, I mean, casting Bert in that role is like, way to just like really up the awkwardness of him trying to sleep with a high school girl.
But he also just rolled in on like a wheelie chair, like from the wing. Someone just like pushed him on and then pulled him back off again. I will never speak ill of Bert because I love him with all my heart. But that was one where it was like, I don't know about this. I don't know about Vince and Marty in this production.
Hi, I'm just breaking in for a minute to ask you to consider donating to Transcend. Founded in 2012, Transcend was the first parent-led peer support network and information hub for transgender children and their families in Australia. They provide a safe and inclusive space for parents and carers, community connection, medical, social, educational and legal information and resources, and much more. You can learn more or make a tax-deductible donation at transcendoz.org. There's a link in the episode description. Then we get into next proper song, Summer Nights. Now that's been there from the beginning. Talk about a classic.
I mean, it's a banger.
That's one of the songs that, like, if you're at some kind of terrible regional nightclub or something, or like a wedding, they'll put that on and then everyone has to be like, all the boys have to do the boys' bits and the girls have to do the girls' bits. It's all the mums and aunties are like, tell me more, tell me more.
I know, when that Grease mega mix comes on and it's like all the fast songs and then it's like dun, 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 and everyone, you know, everyone really starts to slow down. They're like, come on, here we go.
Yeah, it's kind of a interesting song. It starts that kind of slow thing or whatever, and it sort of builds up and ends slow as well. Proper musical theatre song. It's
such a good song, and it's one of those real introduce all the characters songs.
Yeah, that's true.
We get a little one-liner from each of the supporting role to sort of get an idea of who they are. You know, Marty asks if he has a car.
Yeah.
Jan asks if he gave you a Snickers. I don't know what she asked. But she's always talking about food.
Yeah, she is. Like, I love it. All those characters just have like one track. It's like, she's the one who loves to eat. Yeah. Oh God.
Marty's the one who in the movie she does have her boyfriends who are away at war.
Yeah.
And in the musical she sings Freddie My Love.
Yeah, that's right. Because that's the other thing, of course, about the movie soundtrack. It's got all these songs on that aren't actually in the movie, or they're just there as like underscoring because they're from the musical and they didn't put them in the movie, but they just put them on the soundtrack.
Yeah, I think it was a good move to leave Freddie My Love out of the movie.
Not a fan?
No. Look, having played the role of Marty in Year 7 and
of
really
course.
having a deep dive on her, yeah, I just think it was the best move.
How was your rendition?
Oh, look, I'm sure it was absolutely a hit and loved by all.
Look where you are now. Moving on. Look at me, I'm Sandra Dee. Now, how did this make you feel as a child watching this? Did it make you feel uncomfortable? Because I always felt a little bit distressed, this scene.
It's funny. I never looked at it or felt the bullying element. You know, I never...
Just like, yeah, get it, Jade.
No, I was just like, they're just telling her what's what. I don't know what I was thinking, but it's like, it's horrible. Poor girl. She was probably thinking, I want to call my mum and go home.
Are you making fun of me, Riz?
Some people are so touchy. Dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun.
That's a weird song as well. It sounds like something for Chichi Bang Bang, you know. Ba-da-da, da-da, da-da-da. It's like a waltz.
Dun, 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 dun. I know, and just like making fun of someone through song while they're just in one little doorway.
Yeah, and then she has
brutal.
to go out to the garden, put some paper in a paddling pool. I mean, the consequences. Yeah, so these obviously Hopelessly Devoted we've already talked about. We're big fans. That's probably the only song from Grease that I still have on my iPhone.
Really?
Yeah, it's a banger.
You listen to that one in tough times?
I reckon for me that is like, if I listen to any of the other songs, if I listen to Summer Nights or whatever, I'd be like, I'm listening to a song from Grease. Whereas Hopelessly Devoted, obviously I don't forget it's from Grease, but I think it stands up as just like a cool pop song on its own.
I agree. I sing it every chance I get at like a corporate or whatever. I just take it down a couple of tones just so that it's more guess mine.
Oh yeah,
not the fair.
Because it lulls you into a false sense of security. You're like, this is fine. Then you have to go, bah, nah.
Exactly. But then the last time I took it down way too far, and I remember being like, oh, this is like, yes, mine. And then I was like, but now it only went up to there. I thought, no, you've gone too far.
That's a great middle eight though. That makes the song for me.
Oh yeah. She just like made it seem so effortless, that song. It's actually really hard to sing.
Grease Lightning, another classic. As we've said, some pretty dodgy lyrics.
In the musical, it is Kaniki who sings it. But Travolta used his star power and said, I'll take that one for me.
Yeah, fair enough. It still works. Like, it doesn't really make any difference narratively. which one of them's singing it.
You know how he does that thing in the movie where he unrolls the Glad wrap over his bulge
Yes.
and then like whips it around the car? Apparently that was a sexual reference to condoms, which seems odd to me. It seems a big move to make, just to make a slightly veiled reference to condoms.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It was a different time. Like that song in particular, I think is an example of like a lot of the stuff that we now think of as slightly dodgy in terms of gender politics. You know, a bunch of guys in a garage talking about how their souped up car is going to get them loads of pussy, essentially. I think you can understand that at a different time that would have seemed like a kind of exciting, taboo-defying, that the original writers of Grease saw themselves as like bringing teenage sexuality out of like the shadows and like showing like what teenagers were really interested in.
Yeah. And men getting together, talking about their, I don't know, sexual desires or what they think will happen or how much pussy, in inverted commas, they're going to get, could also just be them living in absolute fantasy land and
That's true.
talking it up to each other.
They do all generally get knocked back by the girls most of the time. Then we got a few that are like, It's Raining on Prom Night. I'm fond of that song.
Love that song. So beautiful.
Yeah, it's a good one. And that's not in the movie, right? Or is it like maybe on in the background somewhere or something?
Yeah, I think it's sung at the dance,
Oh, okay, yeah.
but in the musical it's sung by Jan. Jan won a competition or something, sings it at the dance, and Sandy sings it as a duet from her living room where she's decided to not go to the dance. It was always, whenever I went on for Sandy, it was my favourite thing to sing.
Oh, really?
It was beautiful.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful song. I'm a fan. Beauty School Dropout. Again, a bit of the movie or the musical that we kind of just take for granted because we're so familiar with it, but it's pretty fucking weird.
Well, yeah, and I just read a thing again. Are these facts annoying?
I love them.
They wrote this based on a story of a girl who dropped out of beauty school and murdered someone.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Come on, Dal, no need for that. Were the two events connected? Was she like, I'm sick of this fucking beauty school, I'm going on a rampage?
My hair turned pink and someone's going to pay. No, I don't know. But yeah, I think that was probably one that I would always fast forward in the movie, actually.
Oh, really? Okay.
However, in our production, at the Arena Spectacular, we had John Farnham playing Teen Angel and singing that every night flying in. And so, I mean, you would never fast forward Farnsey singing that.
Absolutely. And that's one of the great things about it is for producers, it's an opportunity to have just a really cool singer who doesn't need to act, doesn't need to come to a lot of rehearsals, just come in and smash that one number.
And he did.
Certainly did. In the original Broadway production, the actor was also Johnny Casino. So it was just like a member of the cast.
Yeah.
But nowadays, obviously, they use it as an opportunity to like star cast. And one thing that I never realised until way too late after having seen the film many times was that the like angels or whatever are her friends.
The Pink Ladies.
Yeah, that totally went over my head for a long time.
Yeah, me too. Probably not as long as you. Maybe when I was 3, I realised. But
I was a bit older. But to be fair, they've got like different wigs and like, I think they've got different wigs, maybe not. But like obviously they've got wings.
they've all got the same, like they've got those perm things on their head.
Oh, that's right. Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Do they have wings or have I made that up?
Yeah.
Are they like angel wings?
Or
Let's
no,
say
maybe
yes.
capes. I don't know.
One or the other. Either way, it's a ruthless
Look,
disguise.
right into the link below.
Exactly. Tweet us at Every Musical Pod with what the fuck are they wearing in that song. Rock and Roll Party Queen, Rock and Roll is Here to Stay. Those Magic Changes, that's a lovely song.
That's a winner.
That's one that in the Grease Live, I watched the boy doing that. I don't know who it was, but he was lovely. He was very good.
Yeah, Magic Changes. Is that when it... I thought that happened...
He's playing the guitar.
Yeah, but I thought that happened earlier in the musical. I thought that happened in... Yeah, it does.
I'm reading the song listing from the movie.
Right.
It's just at the dance in the movie.
Yeah.
Tears on My Pillow. Now that's an actual 1950s song, which is weird. Because is that the only actual... Oh no, actually on this soundtrack there's got Hound Dog and...
Yeah, there's
and La Bamba. But see, this all passed me by probably because I had like the cassette version of the soundtrack, so I didn't even have all of these songs on it. Like looking at this track listing, it's got La Bamba and things like that. Like I definitely didn't have that on my soundtrack.
Oh, I definitely remember Blue Moon because it's where they flash their bums at the camera
Of course.
on the live stream of the dance.
Blue Moon was written in 1934. Little fact for you there. Okay, yeah, Hound Dog, Born to Hand Jive. Now that's, of course, that's the big set piece with, what's the name? Cha-Cha?
Cha-Cha Di Gregorio. Best dancer at St. Bernadette's.
She's the villain of the piece, wouldn't you say? I reckon she's the one that gets booed when she comes out from the curtain call.
Yeah. But she's a good dancer. You got to give her props for that. Do you want do you want a little fact on Cha-Cha or what?
Of course I do.
In the movie, in the scene with the car chase, the race, you know, when she's rooting for Danny and she takes off her scarf and does the "come on, baby." That day, she had an ectopic pregnancy, and after filming that scene, had to go and have a surgery.
Oh my God! Why are your facts all so bleak?
Well, I'm sorry. The world is not a perfect place.
Wow. Well, what a trooper. I'm a fan now. I won't be booing her anymore.
Yeah, exactly. You rethink that boo. You never know what Cha-Cha's going through.
That's true. Maybe we should do like a Wicked style spin-off about Cha-Cha from her point of view. Maybe she had real feelings for Danny. The song Sandy. Now that's another one that was written for the movie. For little Johnny Travolta.
Incredible. I love that song.
Do you?
Yeah.
I'm okay with it. I wouldn't say I love it.
Really?
Not one of my faves.
Oh, no, I
mean, it's catchy. They're all catchy.
And there's the hot dog doing the dance on the screen behind him.
That's right.
Travolta wanted the number to end on a close-up of him, and the director really pushed for it to be on the close-up of the hot dog getting back into the hot dog bun. And that was a bone of contention, but the director won.
Extraordinary.
John sounds like he was a little bit of he was the diva of the set for sure.
I think it was one of those situations where it was very clear he was hot at the time. It was very clear that he was in charge, except when it came to the hot dogs, obviously. Love that was the hill the director wanted to die on. He was like, I feel very strongly about the hot dog graphic.
Yeah, John was hot property. Olivia was new, fresh meat. But she talks about how they did that Danny Sandy scene where they see each other for the first time, you know, at the rally. Danny, Sandy, thought you were going back to Australia. We had a change of plans. Apparently, in that scene, John messed up the take on purpose and then took Olivia to the side and said, "You can do better." And she said she was really grateful for that because she had another chance and she did a better job of the scene. But so he was...
That could have gone one of either way.
Yeah. Imagine she was like, that's the best I could have done and you ruined it.
She's nervous. She's not really an actor. First scene, your co-star takes you aside and is like, listen, we're all rooting for you.
Listen, I'm hot right now.
Don't fuck this up. You're only here because of me. You can do better.
You can't even do the accent.
I'm glad she rose to the occasion.
Yeah, well, she said she appreciated it.
Do you think he fucked it up deliberately and was like, listen, just do an Australian accent. Forget this American thing. It's not working.
We'll change your name.
My career's on the line. There are worse things I could do. Classic Rizzo number.
Yeah. It's the second Hopelessly Devoted of the piece,
True.
isn't it?
And it's like I mean, obviously Rizzo sings Look at Me, I'm Sandra Dee, but really there are worse things I could do is just one of those things of like, it's really just her one number, her one proper number in the show. And it's just like, let's look at Rizzo for like 3 minutes, but let's have a fucking awesome number that also shows us her vulnerability and makes us see her in a different light. And we're just like, love her.
I know, but that side of Rizzo, obviously we've seen her strong exterior, and then that song was to show us the vulnerability, but we never really did see it anywhere else. Her and Kaniki made up. We know that, but we didn't see her change her mind about Sandy or accept her anymore. That was sort of the only moment. Maybe it's quite underwritten for Rizzo.
Definitely. I mean, I guess it's the same in the movie, but I definitely noticed when I've seen the show on stage that they kind of just try and wrap everything up in a couple of lines of dialogue in the middle of We Go Together. Or that's how it is, isn't it?
Absolutely. She's like, I got my period.
Yay! And Danny's like, are you still mad at me? Like, while they're dancing. You still mad at me, Sandy? Oh, the hell with it. We got to get it. It's like, that's how they resolve everything.
That is literally the line. The hell with it.
They're just like, okay, guys, come on. We're going to have to pay the musicians overtime. Wrap it up.
Exactly. We don't want Act 2 to go for more than 23 minutes.
Just improvise some dialogue over the song and let's get out of here.
Oh, the mega mix at the end goes for as long as the entire act.
And then the one big one, apart from We Go Together, which you just mentioned, is obviously You're the One That I Want, which again, written for the movie.
Really?
So hard to imagine the show without these songs. But yeah, You're the One That I Want was written for the movie. It's one of the biggest selling singles in history, more than 15 million copies.
Well, that whole Shake Shack, the set around that, it was so amazing. Even though I still can never understand why they couldn't get the song in sync. There's a moment where they're doing the ooh, 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 and they do the oohs at the wrong time to each other. And I think, how did this make the cut?
It's fucked.
Well, there's some things I just refuse to accept, and that's one of them.
Well, again, it's just like with the Australian accent, or like with Lamadi Who Could Dance, just like, as a very much a sense of like, fuck it, that'll do. It'll be fine.
We've got the hot dog in the bun, just move on.
It was the 70s. There was probably a lot of cocaine going around. The priority really wasn't on what was on screen. Yeah. So, yeah, in the original stage show, they sang a song called All Choked Up, which kind of is in the place of that. I don't know how that goes, but I'm sure it's on iTunes. We should all check it out. I'll talk about it on the
I think there's
extras.
probably a reason it was cut. Probably sucks. Don't bother looking it up.
Oh, okay. Well, the reviews are in from Christie Whelan, who's never heard the song.
Well, there's a reason.
True. But going through those songs really does make you think, oh, yeah, shit, this is really a show or a movie where we know all of the songs so well and they're so evocative. Yeah. It's a hit.
There's also another song that they sing it just before There Are Worse Things I Could Do in the musical.
Rock and Roll Party Queen?
Yeah, that's it.
Rock and Roll Party Queen.
Yeah. Yeah, so the boys just sing that. One of them brings his guitar and they just have a little sing-song. So it's kind of, these boys, when they're not zooping up cars and trying to pick up girls, they're just having a little sing-song round in a circle. They're everymen, they just do it all.
Yeah. So Rock and Roll Party Queen is sung by Doody and Roger. And Roger is a character that weirdly they just cut for the movie. So Roger sings a couple of songs. In the stage show, he sings Mooning with Jan and he sings Rock and Roll Party Queen with Doody. But they kept, from what I can tell, they kept all of the other Pink Ladies and T-Birds, but they cut Roger. I wonder what he did to offend.
Well, the blonde one from the movie, Putsy, he's not. So maybe he's Roger.
Ah, right. But he just didn't get the songs.
Yeah. He was actually the only young person. He's the youngest cast member of the film.
I kind of forget about this, but remember how Sandy has that other boyfriend who's the jock, the blonde jock? And he apparently was a last-minute replacement because they cast an actor in that role who got stage fright, or I guess set fright, and had to drop out, and so that guy came in last minute to play the role. Isn't that weird?
Set fright?
I've never heard of someone having stage fright making a movie to the extent that they have to drop out, but apparently that's what happened.
Wow.
And again, something that went completely over my head as a child, and to be honest, I probably wouldn't be aware of even now if it wasn't for Wikipedia, is that they cast quite a lot of people in the movie in the adult roles who were like faces from 1950s television as sort of an in-joke because it was about the 50s. Mm-hmm. So Sid Caesar, who was a big comedian on television, he plays the coach. Who else? A lot of these people, I don't even know who they are, but Dodie Goodman, Joan Blondell, Ed Burns, Alice Ghostly. You know that Mrs. Murdoch, the auto shop teacher, Vince Fontaine, the secretary Blanche, they're all people who were in 1950s sitcoms. So it was a little bit of an in-joke for American audiences.
Blanche was an incredible character.
She was very good.
And there's a scene where the woman who works at it's called the Burger Barn in the musical, but whatever, diner, they're all standing around the TV watching the night of the dance. Mm-hmm. And one of the workers says, "There's Danny and Sandy." And that is John Travolta's sister.
Heaven. Oh, she's bringing the trivia.
I could imagine if I was leading a film, my sister would be like, get me a line. Get me a role in there.
Oh, get me a line, Christy.
Oh, just one. Come on.
I can imagine that too. One thing I do want to acknowledge and talk about before we finish is Grease 2.
I'm so glad you've brought this up.
Feelings on Grease 2?
I love Grease 2.
Same.
Is there anyone hotter than Michelle Pfeiffer as Stephanie Zanoni? The answer is no.
Fair enough. Maxwell Caulfield's pretty beautiful as well.
He is.
It's quite extraordinary that they managed to make a sequel to something as enormously popular as Grease, the highest grossing musical of all time, and that it was such a flop.
I know.
You would have thought people would have just gone anyway. They didn't even go and then were disappointed. They just didn't go.
No one went.
Nah.
Well, I tell you, I made up for it with my VHS of that. I thought it was, again, banger after banger. There was a couple that I used to fast forward. But yeah, in the majority, I just loved it.
Yeah, I only came to it as a teenager when people that I knew as a teenager kind of talked about it in terms of like camp value. And so I came to it then, but yeah, I loved it too. But it's like, I think it's an example of the fact that so many big successes, and Grease is an example, are things that just, as we talked about, they come together in weird ways. Like the movie is like, it's a stage musical, but with some new songs written and then a whole new theme song written by someone different, and some of the plot's been changed and some stuff you're not really sure about, but it doesn't really matter because it's just, it clicks and somehow it works. And I guess with Grease too, it's like, everything's the same, but it just didn't have whatever that magic was, you know?
Well, it was the reverse, wasn't it?
Yeah.
She was the bad girl and he was the good boy.
Yeah.
But Lorna laughed.
It's got Judy Garland's daughter in. I mean, how much more do you want?
For God's sake. I'm not breaking my nails.
We're going to score tonight. That's a classic from Grease 2.
Can you sing all the words to Reproduction?
I don't know if I can do all the words to Reproduction. I could probably do Cool Rider.
I could do the parts of a flower are so constructive that I could do the whole thing. And I also loved the number where they I'll be your girl for seasons all the year through. And then Michelle Pfeiffer went into her like dreamlike trance song about Michael. She thought that he died in a motorbike accident.
Yes.
Remember? And she was in that. She was wearing a Christmas tree and a star on her head. She just looked so beautiful.
I've got to rewatch this movie. And then there's that whole sequence where let's do it for our country. Talk about your problematic gender politics. That one of the boys fakes a nuclear attack to get his girlfriend or a girl that he likes into a nuclear bunker and tells her that like there's been a nuclear attack, so that they have to have sex so that they can like populate the country after a nuclear
Also, they don't die virgins.
Right. Yeah.
Isn't it?
Well, I don't know. I always just assume it's like, let's do it for our country. I assume the idea is like that they have to have kids, right? No? I don't know. Maybe they didn't really think it through that far.
No, I think it was, this might be it. We might be dying. Or I might have to go to war. Might be your last chance to get on this D.
Oh, is that...
Look, I don't know. It didn't work for him anyway.
Or do another podcast on Grease 2 sometime when you come back.
Oh, I'll be there.
And the last thing I want to say is that allegedly they're developing a prequel. Did you hear about this?
I did.
So what do we think? Do we think it's going to happen?
I hope not.
Oh, why is that? You love Grease and you love Grease 2. Why wouldn't you want more Grease material?
It's like redoing Annie, you know?
But they did redo Annie and that was amazing.
You loved the new Annie.
You
loved Cameron Diaz as Miss Hannigan.
It's not that I liked it, but I did think it was, and I rarely take this approach, but it was one of those things, a bit like Grease 2. I was like, this is so bad. It's kind of fascinating and amazing. Her singing Little Girls with the weird auto-tune, and then the fact that they kind of rewrote some of the songs. It's like they sampled the original, so you have like the chorus, and then she sings a completely different song. Wow, unmissable.
No, I disagree. I could have lived without that.
Okay, so no.
I heard they were going to remake Grease, which that really riled me up. But I suppose a prequel, sure. Give it a go if you want.
Apparently it's called Summer Loving. It was sort of announced last year. It's being developed by Paramount Pictures, who I assume have the rights to Grease. But I wouldn't hold your breath.
Oh, well, I won't then. I was going to, but now I won't.
Every musical ever, you can listen whenever. No script whatsoever. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Skip an episode, never. Every musical ever. Scat.
The dulcet tones of Sheridan Harbridge once again. Thank you to Christie for that chat about Grease. Please send me any of your correspondence, feedback, corrections, arguments, anything at all, via our social media at everymusicalpod or everymusicalpod@gmail.com. There are links in the episode description. And on Friday, on our Grease Encore episode, we will be talking to the director of the movie Grease, Randall Kleiser. Here's a little excerpt where we talked about the title song and that animated sequence. And then, of course, there's the title song, Grease. And so I've heard you say that there was the animation for that title sequence was originally designed to work with a completely different song.
That's right. And it's on the latest DVD release that we did. We put the song that was originally written for the title sequence there and put the lyrics under it so you could sort of see what we had planned, which was much more of a 50s feeling. I'm happy that we had that Frankie Valli Bee Gees song instead because it was a huge hit. But, I just felt at the time that it didn't fit the feeling of the 50s. But I was outvoted.
Thank you for listening to Every Musical Ever. I'm your host, Richard Carroll. This theme music was composed and performed by Brent Hill, with the alternative versions performed by Sheridan Harbridge. The artwork for the show was designed by Achi. The introduction, content warning, and outroduction were read by Leo Campbell. Please rate and review us wherever you found this podcast. Find us on social media at Every Musical Pod and visit the Patreon for more content. See you next week.
Every musical ever.
Thank you for listening to Every Musical Ever. If you liked it, you can give a star review on the Apple Podcast app or wherever you found this podcast. And don't forget to subscribe.